Aloha. Welcome to Ably Seminars Sessions. Last time we talked about a single agency where one side represents just a seller and the other side represents just a buyer. This time we're going to talk about sometime a situation that arises where one agent, one company will represent both sellers and buyers, and that's called a dual agency. So a single agency is pretty clean. Buyers represented by the agent, buyers represented by the broker, and sellers represented by another broker from two different companies. So they don't cross paths except in a transaction. In a dual agency, a situation might arise where one agent represents a seller, has an open house, and someone walks in and says, boy, I like this house, I like you, can you help me? And they'll ask you to help represent them as a buyer. Now you have a slight dilemma because you're representing the seller and the buyer wants to have you represent them. If the seller said in the listing contract, it's okay to have a dual agency, then you have to tell the buyer, I'd be glad to help you, but I want you to know that there might be a potential conflict of interest because we represent the seller and now you're asking us to help you as a buyer, and we have to be totally neutral in all transactions. And I cannot tell you how much the seller would come down to on his price, and I can't tell you how much a buyer would come up to on his purchase price, because he might say, oh, I like this house, I'd offer $20,000 more. Well, the agent on a single agency can talk about what the other side said, because you have agency relationship only to one side. But if you have a dual agency relationship, then you have to be careful, because what the seller said they would accept, the lowest price, and what the buyer said they would offer at the highest price, and you as a dual agent cannot disclose that information. So then somebody might think, well, then why would I want a dual agency? Because if you can't tell me what the best price might be, and that's a dilemma in a dual agency. You have to be very careful, being confidential about the information that you're going to disclose to buyer or seller. Another situation that could arise is in a larger company, you might have agent A represent seller, and agent A represent buyer, and agent B says, hey, I have a client that wants to buy your listing. That's a form of dual agency because you have the same company and you have agent A represent seller, agent B represent buyer. That's a dual agency because both agents belong to the same company. The two agents cannot be in collusion with each other and tell each other secrets about how much the seller would come down to and how much the buyer would go up to. And again, it's confidential, and you have to keep everything totally separate. And sometimes that's hard to do. The consent has to be given in writing. You can't just verbally say, yeah, dual agency is okay. So there is a form that realtors use so that the buyer and the seller and the broker that represents the buyers and sellers in that transaction, three of them have to sign a dual agency agreement. You as a sub-agent, as a brand new agent, you don't sign anything. You just prepare the paperwork. Sorry, all right? So in a dual agency, it's the seller's agent and the buyer's agent that could be represented by one agent or two separate agents from the same company that could have a dual agency working under the same umbrella. So I hope you learned something new about dual agency. Aloha.